So, a very good evening to all of you. Today, we are going to start the block two of this MSD 01636 strategies and models in sustainability. So, in that, if you look, I'm sure most of you must have looked into the study material. The major focus of this block is some of the tools and some of the methods which we need to follow when you are looking for a effective natural resource management. So before waiting that lecture, I thought that it is better to take whatever the possible topic whenever I have time. So before looking into the basic of that remote sensing GIS, which is very much important in this era of ICT, where whenever you apply for any, whenever you are looking for any approach or methods for studying or for that application of different models. So remote sensing and GI is one of the important tools where as a policy maker, planners, as a scholar need to have a quick knowledge about or awareness about knowledge about the basic of remote sensing, which Professor Desmond will take a class tomorrow. So before waiting that, I thought that it's better to have a brief idea about natural resource management at micro level. The basic of natural resource management, we have already talked about this particular topic in course one also, then in course this two also. But here, the difference is what we were talking in that time was an overview of natural resource management at different level. Here, we are going to look into implementation part to look into what kind of methodology we have to do, how the people has to involve when we talk about natural resource management. Because when we talk about sustainability is, as you know, it is a very simple way. It is looking into an effective way of managing the resources, right? And the principle of sustainable science is, we are trying to, limit that negative impact of this interaction, negative impact that was happened, that was because of the human pressure on the resources. So in fact, if you look into the principle of sustainable science, it is about the study of interaction between nature and society. When we talk about nature, nature is about why we depend on nature. We depend on nature for resources. So that is a major point we have to understand. So if we look back to the basic of natural resource management, it refers to the sustainable utilization of major natural resources. What are major natural resources? We know land, water, air, minerals, forests, fisheries, wildflower, and fauna. In fact, the resources around us, wherever you are, the resources around us. You may be in rural area, you may be in urban area, wherever you are. Okay. So when we talk about sustainability is to, manage, to understand that relation between the natural environment and the society, the human. So when we talk about natural resource management is for the point of that utilization, effective utilization is that sustainable utilization of the resources. And the reason behind why we need to aware about that is, population is increasing, and because of that, when the population increases, the pressure directly goes to the environment. When directly pressure goes to the environment, resource crunches happen, and because of a human behavior, knowingly or unknowingly, instead of utilization, from the beginning of civilization, we know that we are exploiting resources. Now, the consequences comes back to us. Now, now we need to shift from the exploitation to the utilization. When we talk about utilization, it is about the effective way of or efficient use of natural resources. So that can look into different scale. when we talk about following those resources. So when we talk about the different skill, and when you understand, when we know or understand about that utilization of resources or exploitation of resources, that has a direct link between this the resources component in and the local people, right? Wherever you are, wherever you are, who are any of the human society, they integrate based into their local area. So that's why involvement of community is more important. So before looking into what are the different methodology that needs to be followed when we talk about natural resource management at micro level, uh, there is a, I mean, there is very important to know about what is community-based natural resource management. We have also talked about the principle of community resource management in different blocks. Here we are revisiting into that, and I want to share some of the basic principles of community-based natural resource management here for academic purpose, and in the one side for the practitioners, so that if there is gap whenever they are, I mean, implementing some of, or they are involving in some of the natural resource management project or planning process, then they will also be able to correct at right time. So, you know, when we talk about the resources in 1950s, 1960s across the world, as I told you, and most of you knows that the way we are implementing the policy program projects, even you take to in India also, we used to follow top-down approach. The policymaker, planner, scientists bring a method. They say that has to be implemented without understanding and knowing what is the local need there. So that was one of the reasons in 60s and 70s. I mean, failures of different program policies was happen. Especially, you know, if you look into India, if you look into different case study, you will find out those failures are because of the sidelining of the local people, because of not involving the communities. So that's why, especially if you look back into 1970s and 80s, now then by understanding the need for local involvement, and there started a wave, okay, we have to involve local people. And this way, community-based natural resource management was started, come off. You know, if you look into any of the case study, watershed management, and then success case study in India, like Sukhna Lake of Chandigarh, Sukho Manjari, you know, you just look into Google it and you will find out that how the scientists, ICS scientists, they involve people, and how that idea comes to their mind, you will find out. Like, you know, that waterman of India, Rajendra Singh, how he started. So that was successful because of the involvement of the local. Then, if you look into some of the literature review based on, you know, I'm talking from technical point of academic point of view, just certain principles are there. That doesn't mean that we have to involve the people. There should be technical guidelines, standard procedures, streamlining the things. Now, when you talk about those community-based natural resources, now, why we have to manage natural resources? You should, or we should understand that before institutionalization, before the modern era comes, when there was no issues also, natural resources were, and they were managed. Who managed it? In what way they manage it? So we have to, appreciate the role of those local people, in what way they are managing the things. So whenever we talk about natural resource management, the principles should be, you know, we should also understand the basic needs of local people, right? That doesn't mean that we are going to follow the natural resource management and whatever the basic needs in their local area, and we are not giving to your basic right then. For example, in India, when we know that, and it as per our institutional mechanism, forest, these are the owner of the forest, they are state government, right? The government. So sometimes we restrict the local people to utilize those resources without understanding the basic needs of those local people. So if we follow in that way, it may not be possible, right? So in the same way, when we talk about natural resource, when you should not be in a control mode, right, by the government, it should be in the mode of control by the local. Then, then obtaining equal delivery, then whatever the benefits we are going to get, that should be, equal delivery should be to the local also, to the implementing organization, means at different level. Okay. And whatever commitment by the different stakeholders, that should be, follow. For example, if the local community is committed that, okay, we'll try to protect this much, this responsibility we will take care, they should also try to fulfill that commitment. The same way the government, whatever the government policy as per their policy program, whatever they committed, the facility to be given to the local, that should also be given in the right time. So if you look at community-based natural resource management, through that principle, it is a mechanism to address both environmental and social economic goals and to balance the exploitation, conservation, and valid ecosystem. Because when you involve the people, as I told you in the first principle, also said that it looks about the needs of the local people. When we were taken care about the needs of the local people, automatically that also border about the livelihood of the local people. When you are caring about a livelihood, that automatically improve their socio-economic condition. In the same way, why we are doing natural resource management? Natural resource management for effective utilization, efficient utilization is for environmental protection. So in that way, when we have involved the community-based natural resource management, that follow the community-based natural resource management approach, socio-economic condition will also be improved, environmental condition or environmental degradation will also be protected. In the same way, exploitation and conservation of different valued ecosystem components will also be maintained. That's why, when we are trying to involve the people also as an expert, that doesn't mean that you carry some of the method or some of the technology there and you implement it and the people are involved. That is not the way. When we are trying to involve people, we have to appreciate, respect that local custom, tradition, their rules, regulation, customary law, we have to respect it. Then only, then whatever our objective, that environment and protection, socio-economic condition will be improved. So as you know, in that way, nowadays, what happen in that way? If we are effectively to, approaching towards this direction nowadays in this era of climate change, also, if we are talking about mitigation of climate change, adaptation of climate change, then that's community-based natural resource management is one of the basic approach to that direction. Okay. Then let us look into, we know that community-based natural resource management was recently, introduced in the sense that, as I told you, most of us know, since 1970s and 60s, 70s, and in India, in fact, it was from 1980s. It used to be in 1960s, 70s, but it was not any broader scale, right? So if you look back, that technically or that academically, if you look back across the globe, how it was started. The problem started that when, as I told you, that what has happened, the natural resources, if you look into the customary law, if you look into the land tenure system across the well, you will find out that in most of the area, it was owned by the local. Then before institutionalization was introduced. In that case also, like grazing ground, right? Then even forest, they were owned by local community, not by individual. So you also talk about common pool resources in another courses. So because of the common ownership, no one taken care. Now everybody talks about that, but no one cares. Okay, this is our property. Then I don't have the responsibility. We have together to do that. And sometimes it is not possible to, to maintain the pressure also. So that they have different chapter. You look into see into that challenges, how it was happen, right? Because sometimes some people who have more example, taking an example of grazing ground. So those people who have more these animals, cattle, they will they are giving so much pressure on that, and some inequalities also happen. Then the governments. Then government is in that time, government's issues is that, okay, because of that, the degradation of its environment happening, resource crunch is happening. That's exactly what the author Garrett Hardin in her book Tragedy and paper Tragedy of Commons, that reflected that study. So to overcome those issues in issues in that area, in those areas, then community-based natural resource management was designed. Another point where here we have to understand is when we say that, for example, in case of pollution, today's we are talking about a kasra, there are a number of kasra fail everywhere, and you say that it is a responsibility of government, right? They have to do. In the same way, it was happen in the natural resources also. So to overcome all that thing, community-based natural resource management was designed. Then what are the types? As we know that community-based natural resource management seeks to support long-term sustainability. When we talk about long-term sustainability, it is not possible to achieve your long-term sustainability in absence of the participation of local people or resource users in the process of decision making. So the different, if you look into the type of resource management practices, a process, you will find out a type like community-based management, that is totally managed by the community for that stock and others. Then community-based conservation, if you look into conservation point of view. Then environment and protection, environment and planning organization, integrated conservation development program, incentive-based conservation, ecosystem management. So these are some of the different types of community-based natural management. Key characteristic of community-based natural resources. What are the key characteristics? When you talk about natural resource management, you have to clearly define the boundaries from this area to geographical boundaries, right? And manage under local rules. As I told you, we have to appreciate, or we have to, acknowledge the local beliefs and tradition, right? That's why, for example, sacred group practice. If we appreciate that, automatically, it will, conserve your resources. That conflict resolution mechanism. Sometimes, community conflicts also happen when we talk about boundaries and all that thing. So in that also, we have to find out a mechanism to resolve those conflicts. That mixture of new management arrangement. When we talk about a management in traditional way, it is managed by the local expert. Here, we have to have a mixture of new management arrangement from the implementing organization and representative from the local authority and the community from the community also, local community also. Then approach to manage natural resources and benefits that are earned from their use. Equal. Then we have to equal distribution and sharing of those benefits which is uh, getting from that effective utilization of this natural resource management. As we know that when we talk about the effective implementation of natural resources, then you will find out natural resource management that will be more successful in locally or communally owned area, community owned area, not in private owned area. So if you look into those, the key characteristic is the promote the sustainable use of natural resource management for the benefit of those people. And one of the author that Gruber in 2010, the author identified 12 organizational principles and key characteristics of effective community-based natural resource management. They are public participation and mobilization. You know, public participation is very, very important. And we need to, before that, to make it more participation, we need to mobilize them about the status of those natural resources. And social capital and collaborative partnership, that is also very important, because without collaboration, network, and partnership, and it will be very difficult to build social capital. So in that way, and then that will, in that way, we will be able to build up social capital, and we'll be able to collaborate learning opportunities to the local stakeholders also by different experts, right? And resource inequity, as I told you, environment justice should be there. Equal benefits for all the stakeholders should be there, irrespective of caste and others. Then and communication information, the dissemination is very important. The real status of those resources, their values in local area, what are their values, their traditional belief, what are those things, those information needs to be collected, and dissemination is important. And at the same time, we need to have a research and information development mechanism, so that that will help in sharing from one stakeholder to other stakeholders. Then one of the important characteristic is devolution empowerment. No, because when you talk about this implementation, sometimes as you know, like in top-down approach, that power is given to the implementing organization. But here we have to devolve the power, and we have to share the power, and we need to empower the local people. The public trust and legitimacy needs to be developed, and regular monitoring and a feedback of the stakeholders and accountability of each and every stakeholders needs to be bring together. The adaptive leadership and co-management, you know, this is very much important, because sometimes, you know, if we are not able to implement that successfully, there is, you know, as I told you, conflict happen in the process. So we have to follow adaptive leadership and co-management practice, otherwise always conflict happen. Okay. Then participatory decision making, as you know, when we talk about community-based natural resource management and community-based participation, in that participatory decision making should be taken place. This principle should be followed. Then this is some of the principle. Okay. Then what are the benefit of community-based natural resource management? When you talk about the benefit, as I told you that it also protect. One is it protect nature, means proper environmental management happen through that holistic approach of natural resource management. Through that, you know, socioeconomic condition improve at different level. For example, that economic condition will be improved locally. In the same way, the revenue will be generated that have a direct impact when you have a successful community-based natural resource management practice. When there is improve in socioeconomic condition in that area and production is increases, automatically it will have a higher impact in revenue generation in that area. Then power, then that have force and sharing of, you will find out power sharing over there, like, you know, empowerment will happen in the local area, and through that, you know, that good governance always happen, because when you have participatory and a very clear that indication of transparency. If transparency is there, automatically good governance happen. Okay. And when that can be again look into direct benefit, what are direct benefit and indirect benefit. When you come into direct benefit, as you know, those are these some of the things they are given that socioeconomic condition improve and more productive resource base is there. Infrastructural development automatically will come because if you are taking example, taking in a rural area, you know, when we have effective natural resource management practice, and if we have develop that kind of what we're talking about, this well development and good governance, automatically school, cleaning, roads, all will come. Okay. And some of the indirect benefit are you know, devolution of powers happen, then through training and then technical training in others. Then that's local people will get technical and managerial capacity, means they will have that knowledge, they will have that technical expertise. Then political empowerment happen, greater visibility, pride and identity. These are some of the indirect benefits. And again, I'm not repeating here. There are some certain challenges as a practitioners that we should try to aware about these challenges before you go to the field, right? One is scale. When you talk about the scale, you know, when you talk about natural resource management, you know, like, you know, some keystone species like lion and tiger, no, their boundary is very vast. So in that process, when you have inter-district, inter-village or interstate boundary, there is a scale problem. So we must try to negotiate and collaborate with other communities, other stakeholders for successful implementation of CBNRM. And another is time. Now, whatever we're talking about natural resource management, you know, it may be, you know, the component if you look into will come component later part. Natural resource component in a very simple logic. Let us take an example of forest resources, especially plant. Every plant have their own life cycle. In the same way, wild animals or their own life cycle. So we have to aware about that. In what time and in what time of the year, in what season, what kind of management practice has to be followed, right? Then complexity and difficulties that happen. The national, law implementing of institution and government have different law, but if you look in the local area, they have different law that has to be appreciated. And in twin that, no, whatever the umbrella laws that should be goes into with that that existing the traditional norms, beliefs, and customary law. Then implementation, and even there also, you know, from one state to one country, they have different laws. For example, you know, if you look into water sharing of different the Indian subcontinent between Bangladesh and India and Bhutan in India, and the same way Pakistan and India. So we have to understand about the complication of those laws that have different laws and different norms from one country to another country. Implementation, same way, policy and legislation depends on policy and legislation that brings under policy and legislation. That also appreciate the role of community. Land tenure, that's also very important. Because when you talk about the laws that community natural resource management, like what I was talking about, an example of elephant and other wild animal. So, you know, you cross that. I mean, horizontally, if you look into that, you will find out some other land which is owned by the individual also. So, what kind of benefit that has to be, look. Okay, these are some of the challenges. Then unequal partnership always happen because there may be 4 or 5 organizations, there may be different communities. So that has also be keep in your mind how to make it an equal distribution, or I mean, whenever we talk about benefit, how to make an equal benefit sharing. Traditional leadership that always an obstacle. No, uh, as per their customary law, they have different way of, okay, that should be in community, there should be the leaders. In the same way, in the modern institutional mechanism also, say an example, our Gram Panchayat leaders should be leaders, or our that this should be the leaders, and this political parties representatives should be leaders. There's some, I mean, conflict may come up, so that challenges you have to look. And the last is very much important, that is the foundation is ecological status of the resources. This is very much important. The challenges. That's why from the beginning itself, we have to involve the local people. Beginning from your, I mean, the first step, right? That's why to address all these challenges, the program must include locally driven, tailor-made solution to address local issues. Because let us take an example of water issues. The water issues from one place to another is very different, right? In a simple way, right? So we have to look into what kind of a process has to follow, right? So in other words, solution that work for one community will not always work for another. This is, so to avoid one side, planners and community leaders should increase participative management process so that those different interests are represented and are part of the decision-making process. That's why I always tell basic principle is, to look into to appreciate first is to appreciate the local customary law, local condition, understand local condition. So let us come into when we have some idea about community-based natural resource management. Why I started with community-based natural resource management is the reason behind is that when we're talking about natural resource management at micro level, how can it happen? If we know some of the basic principle of community-based natural resource management, then it will be very easy for us to understand at the micro level, okay, how we have to implement it. So when we talk about NRM components at micro level, don't look at national level. I'm talking about micro level, because when you talk about the resources issues, they are evenly distributed. Take an example in India also. In some part of the country, that water are abundantly available. India, the issue is not water, the issue is others. In some part, the issue is for others, right? So if you basically look into that, it can be look into one is biodiversity, then second is water management, water and the biodiversity. Then when you talk about biodiversity, when you talk about water management system, automatically it include your soil, means land on soil. So based on your study material, I'm linking up this. Then communities in gene seed grant banks we are going to discuss on, and cultural diversity biodiversity linkage. This is very much important also. That's why we have to, if we have to look those components of natural resource management, then only we will be able to achieve through community-based CBNRM only. So to mark that's community-based natural resource management, when you talk about biodiversity, as you know that what are the ecosystem services given by the biodiversity, and then different we have already learned about that, and the attachment with the local people is also learned about it. So in India, to look into biodiversity management, we have People's Biodiversity Register under India's Biological Diversity Act. This People Biodiversity Register exercise provides a platform for the community members to initiate positive steps to manage their biodiversity resource better. Because we have to appreciate their role through a legal process, right? The proper institutionalization. They know it, but that has to be appreciated. That is one of the objectives why we have people biodiversity register. And this act aims to promote conservation. They already, as you know, in most of the rural area, you will find out those communities, especially in Northeast and tribal belt of in central in India and southern in most part of the India, they have their own conservation practices. So that's needs to be well recognized through a proper mechanism. So the aim of people biodiversity register is to promote conservation, sustainable use, and equitable sharing of benefits of India's biodiversity resources. And so, to make it more effective and in a proper way, it also established National Biodiversity Authority. As you know, under National Biodiversity Authority, we have State Biodiversity Board. And under that, we have Biodiversity Management Committee at different level, Panchayat, municipality, city, corporation. So if you look into that, it says that every local body shall constitute biodiversity management committee within its area for the purpose of promoting conservation, sustainable use, and documentation of biological diversity, including preservation of habitats, conservation of land, folk varieties, cultivars, domesticated stocks, breeds of animals, and microorganisms, and chronicling of knowledge relating to biological diversity. Means you have to keep the record of most of the biodiversity in your surrounding area. So when we implement this people biodiversity register, it should not be a simple list of plant animal species and of varieties of cultivated crops or domesticated animal. It should not even just be a list along with a record of folk knowledge of medicine, other uses of living organism, but also it should be a society knowledge base for conservation, sustainable use, and equitable sharing of benefits of biodiversity. So this people biodiversity the register must be concerned with documentation of many facets of people cause interaction as well. How it interacts, the role of society, and the value of those spaces in our society that needs to be. So in that way, to understand that, then you have you can follow this irrespective of whether government is this sponsoring project or not. Then we can give some of the data to fulfill this PBR. Some of the data which we can collect, we can maintain is we were collecting their data, and then their names should be there when it was. Because when we talk about natural resource management, as I mentioned you, the challenges, when we talk about challenges and all that thing, no. Every resources, living resources, they have their own life cycle. So that's why we need to know keep the data of data collection, maintain the record the data of data collection. Then from where the source of information. These are some of the key questions, information we need to maintain for collecting those, making biodiversity register of your area susceptible. That's why, because through that, these are some of the, it is already on your estimator. For example, susceptible to pest, disease, low moisture, water logging, and yield of annual yield. What is the product? What is the measurement of local unit? What are those things, and what are the parts used? These are some of the information we can gather and keep for record that will be useful to have implement different conservation program. When it comes to water management system, when you talk about water management, as we know that we have we already have our traditional age old practice, like we have Pani Panchayat, right? So when we talk about all these water management system, it should be different tier system with user stakeholder that represent a different level. When the first is, when you talk about water management, it is not only about your drinking water sources. That's I told you in the beginning. Just issues of water resources. That, for example, water scarcity is different from one part to other. For example, in Delhi, metro cities, our issues of water is for drinking water and other sanitation purpose, right? But if you look into other part, like in agricultural field and Punjab, and then to Haryana, then Rajasthan, another part of the country, then you will find out some of in the field that is about irrigation, right? So when we have, it's a structure, community water management bodies that should be prepare a proper plan for the maintenance of irrigation system and carry out regular maintenance work, right? Then that should be when we are properly maintaining the planning for maintenance of irrigation. That's why in that time also we have to take care about that life cycle of the crops you are going to grow, or cropping pattern over there. So these are some of the major functions of community water area. So in the same way, when we are talking about the involvement of each and every individual to make them well aware about the status of the resources, especially water body, one should aware about some of this information where in their local area. For example, name of watershed area, you need to have that knowledge and type local name, existing management authority, then again who are using and who are not using, right? Then disaster management system from the perspective of different use. These are some of the information we can gather. One of the community-based natural resource management model proposed by, which is also effectively implemented by this MSSRF, is community Zin Sit Grand Bank. When we talk about communities in Seed Grand Bank, now first is when we talk about seed, it is about plant genetic resources, right? So for them, those communities, especially, for example, in tribal area, most of the genes, they are conserving for us, but we sometimes not able to appreciate them. So sometimes because of one or other reason, that scarcity of cities also happen. You also forget about for their food, but not only that for next, cropping season, sometimes there is that scarcity of those seeds. So in that way, to cope up all these issues, to try to minimize those issues. One is availability for food. Second is that as I said for next cropping season, this Zinsigan bank will be useful. Okay, this will not only conserve the biodiversity but also improve their, livelihood also. That's why this community Zin Sit Grand Bank is a bank with a difference. When you talk about the Zin Bank, because Zin word is Zin Bank, that will take care, that will, keep a bank of land races with distinct characteristics for long-term storage, right? When we talk about long-term storage, you are talking about, you are also aware about the loss of agrobiodiversity. When we talk about here, let us take an example of loss of biodiversity. How to minimize the loss of agrobiodiversity? This is one of the options. Seed bank. Let's talk about storage of excess seeds of farmers. Some farmer may have excess seeds, right? So they may have, more production in a year. That can also be, stored in. And that when we have properly stored in that bank, that ensure that seeds are available for cultivation for next crop, right? Then third is Grand Bank. In the same way, those farmers who have excess seeds, they can store there. Then when they store there, that ensure food security in the interior region. Then also reduce the danger of seeds being consumed in times of stress, right? So through this way, if we effectively implement with the participation of community as an approach to community-based nature resource management, these three banks can be integrated, and it has already integrated in this approach. It supported each other. First, loss of viability of seeds from the seed bank can be met by gene bank samples, right? If when you have seed banks, in seed bank you give for the next cropping season, but the purpose of your gene bank is for long-term storage. When your viabilities, that viable seed is not available in your seed bank, then we can use from that vault of seeds from seed bank. So the grain bank, in the same way, the grain bank can supply excess grain, a seed, and gene material in times of need. Right? You have properly managed that. So that can be managed by local community. So this is how you have to, effectively implement this community-based natural resource management. This is one of the approach, right? Then let us have a look into how cultural diversity and biodiversity are interlinked. As repeatedly, in several lectures, we talk about the role of culture in biodiversity conservation. And the same way, what you can say, it is the nature that gives you different culture. It is different culture to conserve the nature. So we have to, aware of all this principle. The same way, when we said that we respect biological diversity, the same way when we respect a biological diversity, we also respect human diversity. Because if you look into across the globe, that it is because of the different environment, we have diversity in biological resources, so as we have diversity in human languages and human culture. When we're talking about loss of biodiversity, in the same way, when biodiversity is lost, in the same way, it will lose some culture of some community. Sometime, that's human race also will be vanished. Take an example of this, our Andaman Nicobar. When some tribe is vanished, or sometimes some tribe extinct, when they extinct, their knowledge, cultural belief, their cultural way of conservation will be lost. When it lost, then automatically some of the important species may be lost, biological species may be lost. So we have to know the intricate relation between culture and the biodiversity. Okay. So in the same way, to appreciate or to encourage community-based natural resource management, because there's no human psychology, the way it is happening, sometimes we know that. Take an example, as I told you about this, management, waste management, we always throw it on to the government. No. So, and sometimes in the other side, we are not appreciating that role of community in conservation or maintenance of environment, health and sanitation, conservation of biology, and so on. So that should be, we have to appreciate the role of different organization, community, that will increase more participation, effective implementation of community-based natural resource management and approach to sustainable natural resource management. That's why some of the aid we have notified in 2003, we have that the protection of plant variety in farmers' right of authority, PB, protection of plant variety, PP, I forget, protection of plant variety in farmers' right. Okay, the two important objectives of this protection of plant variety in farmer right act are to provide an effective system protection of plant varieties and right of farmers and plant breeders. See, one is you need to have an effective system protection of plant varieties, and the other is right of farmers and plant breeders. Two is to recognize and protect rights of the farmers in respect of their contribution made at any time in conservation, in improvement, and making available plant genetic resources for the development of new plant varieties. Right? In this way, we appreciate them. We are and bringing legally or streamlining their role. If you look into that BPR Act, you will find FR Act, you will find out there is a separate chapter of farmers' right that allows farmers to register their varieties and extend varieties, right? Then to eligible to be eligible for recognition and reward from the National Gene Fund. This is happening. So to enjoy the traditional right on the seed for saving, sowing, resowing, exchanging, sharing, and selling. To be eligible for compensation in lieu of an agronomic performance inferior to what is claimed by the breeder of a variety. That's why, what is Monsanto and what is happening because of this. Now, again, if you look into the Rule 24 of the Act, application of the registration of all the extant varieties of a given crop species have to be fulfilled within 3 years from the return. See, these are some of the, rules under that Act. I will not go into details here. So the point is that when we have certain, this kind of, way of appreciating the farmers, and when you apply for that this particular characterization of farmers' varieties, then these are some of the information you need to fill up when you apply for that recognition of that variety, right? That's inventory, characterization, documentation of farmers' variety, right? So these are in summarizing what it asks about the life cycle of that plant and its agronomic characteristic, biological characteristic, and where that environment and condition which is suitable for this cultivation of this plant and all these things. So the point is that when we in front of us, we have a mechanism and approach that there is an effective natural resource management for sustainable development. That approach is community-based natural resource management. When we talk about community-based natural resource management, what we have to do, we have to learn it in terms of principle, benefits, and its challenges. Then the second question come in our mind is, when we talk about natural resource and micro level, what are the basic components which we have to take care as an approach to effective utilization of resources, effective management of resources. One is, as we know, biodiversity. Second is water. When we talk these two components, it automatically include your land. So in this, what Professor Swaminathan when we developed this course, and when we his objective is he introduced this particular chapter is in that seed gene grand bank. That in that, how the communities plays an important role. If we properly maintain that, if we properly effectively utilize the water resources, properly maintain the that biodiversity of that area, if we properly maintain the that banks, then it will taken care about what we are talking about to this climate change, that your adaptation, then co-evolution with climate change will also be, easily possible. So in that way, then when they are taking key roles, the farmers, the communities, they're taking key role in conservation, effective utilization of resources, their responsibility needs to be appreciated. So that's why we have plants variety this act, that PPBR Act. Then to make more effective, we have community-based that people's biodiversity register. So in that way, we can, in India, especially in India, we can effectively implement community-based natural resource management. This is what I want to share with all of you. Half of 50% of this talk is already in our study in your study material. So with this, let us have